Sometimes children become so engrossed in their lives that the silence becomes unbearable, as if it's pressing down on their shoulders. My name is Evelyn, and I'm 68 years old. My whole life has revolved around Tiffany, my daughter, whom I've raised alone since she was a tiny angel in my arms. Working tirelessly to give her the best was my only way of showing love. There were days when I denied myself food just so she could be full, and nights when I whispered prayers for her happiness. Every sacrifice, every tear I secretly wiped away, it was all for her. I fondly remember the times when Tiffany was a giggling little girl, hugging me tightly as if the world was about to collapse. She used to say I was her hero, that one day she would buy me a huge house where I wouldn't want for anything. Those moments were my fuel, my strength to keep going, even when I felt like I was falling. I firmly believed that a mother's love was enough to build a future full of gratitude. How naive I was. Over the years, Tiffany changed. The hardships she once accepted with childlike tenderness now caused her embarrassment, as if I had done something wrong. While I carefully mended the holes in her dresses, wishing she would go to school looking neat, her thoughts were somewhere far away, in a world of luxury that I could never give her. Her eyes, once full of tender love, now cast silent reproaches at me. I saw it, felt the icy wind of change creeping into our relationship, but stubbornly refused to believe it. How could my own flesh and blood, my little Tiffany, drift away from me, from the one who was ready to give her life for her? But life, that relentless teacher, always finds a way to open our eyes to what we desperately don't want to see. With each of her returns home, Tiffany seemed to bring with her fragments of another world, a world where there was no place for me. And yet I smiled, trying not to show my pain. It was enough for me to see her happy, even if that happiness didn't include me. I naively thought it would always be like this. I didn't suspect that the real storm was yet to come. A storm that doesn't rumble with thunder and lightning, but slowly and painfully tears the soul into small pieces, leaving only a gaping emptiness. From early childhood, Tiffany was different from the other girls in our neighborhood. While her friends dreamed of careers as teachers or nurses, she confidently declared that she would become someone important, someone who would never return to the dusty streets of my neighborhood. There was a fire of ambition burning in her eyes, which both amazed and frightened me. I idolized her ambition, although her disregard for our origins sometimes tormented my soul. I vowed to myself that I would do everything to make her soar to the stars, even if I was destined to remain forever on the ground. Years flew by, and Tiffany transformed into a dazzling young woman with an arrogant gaze and increasingly terse phrases directed at me. Her world filled with new friends, bold dreams, and our connection faded like morning mist. Every move I made towards her was met with an invisible wall of alienation. But I didn't give up, because in my motherly heart there was still a glimmer of hope to get my girl back. One day, on a raw evening, as I was fussing over her favorite treat, I accidentally overheard her phone conversation. She thought I was far away, but her words pierced me like shards of ice. "I'm just ashamed to be seen with her in public," she whispered about me, about the woman who had sacrificed everything to see her happy. I froze, holding the ladle, and felt something inside me collapse in silent agony. My hands trembled, and my eyes clouded over with piercing pain. I remained silent, as always, pushing the pain deep inside. I naively believed that one day she would understand the value of my love. But Tiffany had already made a decision, a ruthless decision that would forever separate us. And I had no idea. Not even a month passed before Tiffany dropped a bombshell on me that tore my soul to shreds. She had secretly gotten married. Secretly. Not a word to me, not a single invitation to share this important day with her. I found out about it by chance, from mutual acquaintances in the store in the neighborhood, as if I were a casual passerby in her life. Images flashed through my head, her dress, her radiant smile, vows of fidelity. But none of these images included me. At first, I tried to find excuses. Maybe it was spontaneous. Maybe we'll still have time to celebrate together. But as soon as I tried to talk to her, to get closer, Tiffany slipped away, avoided me, as if I were a nagging shadow from the past. Her eyes, usually so warm, now looked right through me, full of some inexplicable guilt and fear. Every call I made was cut short, drowned in the soulless voice of the answering machine. Every message sent with hope dissolved into silence. The bitter truth pierced me, although it was excruciatingly difficult to accept. She had chosen another world, a world where there was no place for me. Months dragged on, turning her absence into a nagging, unhealed wound. Family photos that once adorned her profile disappeared as if they never existed. Visits ceased, and the tender "I love you" Mum transformed into an echo of a distant past. In my humble home, I carefully kept her room untouched, as if it were a small temple to our love, naively hoping that one day she would return, even for a moment, just to say hello. But that day never came. On frosty December nights, decorating the tree alone, I whispered into the void, trying to understand at what point I ceased to be important to her. Was maternal love so fragile that it could be forgotten like an old, unwanted toy, abandoned in a dusty box? There were no answers, only silence, echoing hollowly in my heart, and loneliness that grew heavier, more unbearable, with each passing day. Years went by, and I learned to live with this gaping void, like learning to walk while overcoming the pain of an unhealed wound, with a hidden hope in my heart that one day everything would change. My house, once filled with bursts of laughter and the patter of hurrying feet, now held only the dull echo of my own mournful sighs. Every birthday, every Mother's Day celebration became a painful reminder. To Tiffany, I had ceased to exist. And yet, every morning, offering a prayer, I begged God, protect her, Lord, do not let her go from you. Sometimes, only from a distance, I would notice her speeding through the city in luxurious taxis, entering glittering restaurants where I could never afford even water. She seemed happy, surrounded by people speaking a language foreign to me, the language of status, flawless appearance, and strained smiles. From my quiet, humble corner, I watched her with a pang of pride and unbearable pain, like looking at a distant star, knowing that it could never be reached. I didn't dare approach. I didn't want to embarrass her any more than I thought I already did by my very existence. It was enough for me to catch her smile furtively, even if that smile was no longer meant for me. Even with my heart shattered into a million pieces, I clung to the fragile hope, one day, by a whim of fate, she would remember me again, she would look for me again. Because a mother's heart, even if life has cruelly turned away from her, will never stop waiting. He couldn't imagine that time, like a ruthless sculptor, had already begun to carve the first cracks of disappointment on Tiffany's heart. Soon the weight of her own decisions would fall on her with all its might, and the soul, hardened by pride, would shatter from the gaping void that had formed in place of rejected love. They say life always presents a bill that one so wants to ignore. For Tiffany, that hour of reckoning struck sooner than she thought. Her marriage, which she had flaunted so much, began to crumble like a sandcastle washed away by the tide. The one for whom she had pushed me away turned out to be just a predator who loved her only as long as it was convenient. I saw it from afar, as clear as day, but a mother's heart does not gloat over another's pain. At first, there were quiet squabbles, the kind that flare up in the eyes, foreshadowing a storm. Then long absences, lies not even veiled in the appearance of decency. Tiffany, the very one who once turned away from me, deeming me unworthy, was now awash in the contempt of a man who had sworn eternal love. Life, that merciless teacher, began to reveal to Tiffany the gaping abyss born of ingratitude. Proud and unyielding, she did not turn to me for help. On the contrary, she retreated even deeper into her world of illusions, desperately pretending that everything was fine, while her heart, like fragile porcelain, cracked in the ringing silence. Every night I offered prayers, begging God to protect her from falling into the abyss of despair, to give her a chance for repentance, while it was not too late. After all, what I feared most was not her suffering, but that I would not live to see the moment when I could embrace her, when she would finally understand the meaning of all that she had rejected with such contempt. Deep down, I knew the day would come when life would demand from her in full for everything she had ignored, and then she would return, even if broken into 1,000 pieces. Months dragged on, and Tiffany remained alone, like a withered flower in an abandoned garden. Her friends, those who had so hypocritically applauded her false happiness, one by one dissolved into the fog of indifference. No one wants to bear the burden of another's sorrow when there is nothing left to boast about, when the glitter and tinsel have disappeared, leaving only emptiness. I watched it from afar, as if watching an approaching storm, realizing that I was powerless to stop it. All that remained was to pray that it would pass by, leaving behind only ruins. Her life, once seemingly perfect, had turned into a chaotic jumble of debts, lies, and betrayals. The husband, who had vowed to be there in sorrow and in joy, abandoned her, leaving only soulless divorce papers and a gaping wound in her heart. Tiffany, with her inherent pride, tried to keep up appearances, but the pain was stronger than any mask. There was not a single outstretched hand ready to support her, not a single voice to comfort her, except mine, which she stubbornly ignored. I learned about her troubles from mutual acquaintances, from snippets of gossip that reached my humble home. News tore at my soul, but I kept silent. I couldn't rush to her with open arms without her permission. A mother's love is unconditional, but it also requires patience and wisdom. Andy, at 68, had learned to wait, holding my breath, for miracles that seemed impossible. Fanny didn't yet know that, despite everything, my heart continued to beat in unison with her pain, filled with love, ready to pour out onto her at any moment. In the night silence of my solitude, my most heartfelt prayer was not for myself, but for her lost soul. I prayed that on the day she decided to return, she would be met not with reproaches, but only with unconditional love, the very love that had always lived within me. One day, an autumn day, when the wind mercilessly whipped the dry leaves in the yard, I was pierced by a sharp, unbearable sadness. Not new, nor old, familiar pain that only a mother can feel when her child suffers. There was no news from Tiffany, but something inside me screamed that her heart was crying out for help, drowning in silent despair, not knowing how to ask. I sat down by the window with a cup of hot coffee, and memories flooded back like a turbulent stream. I remembered a little girl, her carefree laughter, her pure, naive dreams. At what point did she learn to be ashamed of me? When did love turn into indifference? There were no answers, only stubborn, unwavering faith. The very faith that lives in a mother's heart, even when it seems that everything is lost forever. That night, sinking into the pillows, I addressed God in a trembling, broken voice. A plea escaped my lips: please, don't let Tiffany get completely lost. Give her the strength to realize her mistake, while I'm still here, in this world, before my time runs out. He knew how often children bitterly regret, but too late, when only a tombstone listens to their belated tears. He didn't want to become just a painful memory for my daughter. He dreamed of being a living, warm embrace for her, a quiet haven where she could always return when the whole world turned away from her. With this thought, I closed my eyes, believing that love, that very, undying love, would sooner or later find its way home. The days dragged on agonizingly slowly, as if time itself shared my grief. My strength was leaving me, my body was weakening, but my heart continued to beat, not losing hope for her return. Deep down, I understood that this was not an ironclad guarantee. Life doesn't always give us a chance to heal all wounds. One morning, sweeping the tiny courtyard, strewn with autumn leaves, I noticed a figure in the distance that seemed painfully familiar. My heart froze in my chest, and then beat wildly, pounding out a rhythm of hope and fear. Could it be her? My heart was pounding, but common sense quickly brought me back to reality. Just a neighbor. He wiped the sweat from my forehead and gasped, wondering how many more times my tormented soul would allow itself to be deceived by illusory hope. A mother's love is blind and stubborn, it clings to the shadows of the past. And Tiffany continued to live in her personal hell, desperately trying to hold on to a life that was slipping away. At night, in silence and solitude, she probably remembered me, but pride, that merciless jailer, wouldn't let her dial my number. Fragments of memories surfaced in her head, memories she was so desperately trying to bury, sincere hugs, the aroma of homemade food, lullabies sung during hours of night fever. And imperceptibly to herself, a tiny crack appeared in her heart, barely noticeable, but enough to let in a ray of truth. She despised the only love that had never betrayed her. It was just a faint whisper in the depths of her consciousness, but it was the beginning of something she could no longer stop. That night, Tiffany couldn't fall asleep. She tossed and turned in her empty bed, as if the sheets had turned into heavy shackles, binding her body. Every corner of her apartment seemed to whisper the bitter truth that she was desperately trying to ignore. The echo of abandonment roamed the rooms, reminding her of the loneliness that she herself had created. The cold house, devoid of the warmth of true love, ruthlessly slapped her in the face with reality. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to sob uncontrollably, without masks, casting aside pride. She cried for what was lost, for lost innocence, unfulfilled dreams, for her departed mother. My tired, but always so kind face flashed in her memory, my wrinkled hands offering her a plate of hot soup, my hugs healing any wound. And then the realization pierced her, like a knife to the heart: she despised the purest and brightest thing that life had given her. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky in delicate orange hues, Tiffany, with an empty gaze, sat on the edge of the bed. There was no strength left to pretend. She knew she had an unpayable debt that time would not forgive. The pride that had once been her support had now become a suffocating chain around her neck. And from the depths of her tormented soul escaped a quiet, desperate cry, God, give me a chance to ask her for forgiveness, before it's too late. In that moment, unable to hesitate any longer, her trembling fingers fumbled for the phone. My number, the one she could never delete, lit up on the screen, but her finger froze in indecision. An icy terror of rejection gripped her. Asterisco, what if it's too late? What if I don't want to see her anymore? Asterisco. She swallowed hard, closed her eyes, and prayed as sincerely as she hadn't prayed since childhood, realizing that this first step towards healing would be the hardest of her life. Al morning, as if chained, Tiffany sat clutching the phone in her hands, feeling the heavy burden of remorse suffocating her. Every second of doubt pierced her consciousness like a dagger. Memory surfaced of times when I had tried to get closer, and she, blinded by pride, had slammed the door right in my face. Asterisco, how could she ask for forgiveness after so many years of neglect? Asterisco. With her heart pounding, ready to burst out of her chest, she finally dialed my number. Ring, ring, ring. She was almost desperate and wanted to hang up, but suddenly. Hello, my warm, surprised voice sounded on the other end of the line. Her chest tightened as if in a vice, and the approaching tears threatened to flood everything around, but she remained silent. Her lips, as if paralyzed, did not obey her. My insistent "who is this?" still echoed in her ears, until silence swallowed the interrupted call, as if it had drowned in her faint-heartedness. Sobs shook her like never before. She felt that the gap between us had become wider than any distance measured in miles. Tiffany understood. One call, one telephone sorry would not be enough. She would have to look me in the eye, meet the gaze of all the ghosts of past years, when she pretended I didn't exist. Only then could she hope for healing of the wounds inflicted. True forgiveness requires humility, not empty, meaningless words. Taking a deep, trembling breath, Tiffany grabbed her purse, threw an old, worn sweater over her shoulders, and left the house. Each step towards my home was a painful struggle with corrosive shame, with the chilling fear of being rejected. She didn't know if I could forgive her, if I would accept her back into my life. But for the first time in many years of adult life, Tiffany was ready to accept any consequences, just to get rid of this unbearable weight that lay like a stone on her heart. Wandering through the old streets of my neighborhood, Tiffany felt how every familiar corner returned to her, bit by bit, memories from a distant childhood. The fruit stand where she, as a little girl, used to buy juicy mangoes. The bench, green with time, a witness to our childhood games that gave birth to the most incredible worlds. The shop around the corner, where I secretly gave her coins for sweets. Everything froze in anticipation, except for her with a heart broken into fragments. At the very doorstep of her childhood home, her feet seemed to have grown into the ground. The modest facade, the flower pots overflowing with blooms, lovingly grown by my hands, the small cross above the door. Everything was painfully familiar and at the same time unbearably distant. She swallowed hard, feeling the memories squeezing her chest like a vice, and with a trembling hand reached for the doorbell. Fear paralyzed her, forcing her to retreat, but the thirst for redemption was stronger. Inside the house, immersed in knitting, I had no idea that fate had heeded my quiet prayers. The doorbell made me get up with difficulty. Who could that be? Flashed through my mind. No one had visited me for a long time. Opening the door, I froze, speechless. She was standing on the threshold, my girl, my Tiffany. Her eyes were red from tears, her clothes were wrinkled, and her soul. Her soul was bare, bleeding from unbearable pain. In the eternity of the frozen moment, our eyes met, words froze on our lips. My heart, exposed and trembling, reached out to her, as if on that day when I first held her, Dini, to my chest. Tears flowed uncontrollably down her cheeks, preventing her from uttering even a simple mum. And then the realization pierced me. This is not just the return of a prodigal daughter. This is the beginning of something immeasurably greater, a meeting of two kindred souls whose connection has never been broken. Tiffany collapsed to her knees, covering her face with her hands, and sobbed like a lost child. My lips trembled, my eyes filled with moisture. For so many years I had dreamed of her return, but I never imagined that it would be colored with such deep, all-consuming pain. Maternal instinct drowned out all grievances. Overcoming the tremor, I knelt down beside her and hugged her. She was crying inconsolably, fragments of phrases escaping through her sobs. Forgive me, Mom. Forgive me for everything. The pain in her voice spoke louder than any words, and I could feel her heart pouring out all its pain and remorse before me. I didn't need any more explanations. Gently running my hand through her hair, as if she were a little girl again, I whispered soothing words in her ear. It's okay, you're home. Your mother never stopped loving you. With effort, I helped her up and led Tiffany into the house, where the old armchair, like a silent guardian, awaited our return. We sank into it together. The trembling wouldn't leave her, and I tightly clasped her icy hands in mine. No reproaches, no lectures, just love. Love, hidden in the silence of waiting, was now reborn, becoming only stronger and purer. Tiffany raised her tear-filled eyes and, stammering, promised, I won't leave again, Mom. I'll never make you feel invisible again. In that moment, I realized that my faith had not been in vain. God, in his boundless mercy, had granted me the miracle I had begged him for, to see my daughter beside me while my weary heart still beats. The days that followed this meeting were like balm for my wounded soul. Tiffany came every evening, and in her hands were not expensive gifts or luxuries, but something much more precious. Her time, her company, her timid laughter, as if caught in a cage. Gradually, the walls of my house, once silent with longing, trembled again, filled with life. Each of her visits was like a healing balm on a wounded heart that had been bleeding in solitude for so long. At first, our conversations were short, intermittent, woven from awkward pauses. Between us lay a chasm of buried pain, and every word seemed fragile, ready to crumble into dust. But just exchanging a glance, touching each other uncertainly, and we remembered that true love doesn't need many words, that sometimes just one shared breath is enough to rebuild a collapsed bridge. One evening, pouring fragrant coffee from an old clay pot, Tiffany looked at me, tears trembling in her eyes. I let you down, Mom, she whispered. I let you down in everything I swore I never would. I smiled at her, gently squeezing her hand in mine. A mother's love doesn't keep count of mistakes, my child, I replied. It only adds blessings every time a child comes home. At 68 years old, this was the most important lesson life had taught me. The past cannot be changed, that's a fact. But every gesture of Tiffany's was like a tiny seed falling into the fertile soil of our new beginning. I understood that these scars would not heal quickly, but I believed, God is on our side. It gave me the priceless opportunity to embrace my daughter before fate separates us forever. With each visit, Tiffany tried to heal not only the crack between us but also the gaping void that had settled in her soul. She helped me sweep the yard, hang the laundry, and cook my favorite dishes. Nothing especial, you say? But for me, these were treasures, more precious than any gold. Her presence healed my wounds, her voice dispelled my loneliness. One evening, when we were conjuring up a bean stew with an episode, Tiffany suddenly uttered words that shook me to the core. Mom, I've been searching for recognition in this world all my life, and only now I realized that true love has always been nearby, here, waiting for me. I was silent, allowing her words to penetrate my heart, which was pounding with gratitude to God for allowing me to hear this truth. Years of separation, the bitterness of lonely tears, all this suddenly lost its meaning. The main thing is that she opened her eyes, her soul awakened before the ruthless clock ticks away the last moment of our lives. Not every mother is given the happiness of holding a repentant child to her chest while life still flickers in them. I was given this rare fortune. In quiet evenings, filled with the aroma of coffee, fresh flatbreads, and dried flowers, long-awaited peace returned to me. Aunt Tiffany, it seemed, finally realized, there is no treasure in this world equal to unconditional maternal love. Love that, even broken and wounded, knows no defeats. Time, once seeming like a silent enemy, turned into a generous ally. Every dawn gave us the opportunity to heal past wounds. Tiffany started going to church with me on Sundays, strolling leisurely to the market, patiently listening to stories that once seemed unbearably boring to her. My daughter, whom I thought was lost, seemed to bloom again. One sunny morning, as I carefully watered the flowers in the garden, Tiffany, as if confessing, whispered to me about the gaping void that had tormented her soul for years. she confessed how desperately she had tried to hide this abyss under a mask of ostentatious luxury, surrounded by fake friends and in a marriage devoid of true intimacy. But all her efforts were in vain. The true medicine, she realized, lay in the very simple and pure love she had once turned away from. "You are my home, my root," she whispered, and each of her words, like a gentle touch, healed my wounded heart. Watching her rediscover the beauty of simple joys, a cup of fragrant hot chocolate, heartfelt conversations late into the night, a quiet prayer before sleep was like a balm, slowly but surely erasing the scars of the past. My greatest fear, leaving this world without waiting for her return, melted away with each day filled with her presence. I knew that I was not destined for many more years, but now, seeing Tiffany find herself, I could leave in peace, knowing that she had found her way. Repentance came in time, before ruthless fate forever imprinted our stories in silent stillness. And every night, with tears of gratitude, I offered prayers to the heavens. Thank you, Lord, for this chance for healing, for the opportunity to live the rest of my days with a pure heart. One day, as the setting sun painted the world in golden hues, Tiffany took me to the park where she used to run as a little girl. We walked slowly, my cane tapping a quiet rhythm on the earthen path, and her hand served as my reliable support. Words were superfluous. The rustling of leaves, the light breeze, and our glances spoke far more than any phrases could express. Two kindred spirits, reunited in silent agreement. We sat down on an old, rusty iron bench in the shade of an ancient tree. Tiffany took my hands in hers, gently kissed each palm, and looked into my eyes with such seriousness that it pierced me to the depths of my soul. "Mum," she whispered in a trembling voice, "I don't know how much time we have left, but every day that God gives me, I want to spend it with you. I love you more than I can ever express." Tears streamed from my eyes, unconstrained by shame or pain. These were tears of gratitude, of reborn love, and of fulfilled silent promises. I didn't need expensive gifts or loud words. The return of my daughter, the warmth of her sincere love, this is a gift I never even dreamed of. It was a true miracle, a second chance that millions yearn for and only a few receive. I raised my eyes to the sky, ablaze with crimson and golden colors of the sunset, and whispered from the bottom of my heart a simple but so important prayer: "Thank you, Lord, for the fact that, despite everything, love turned out to be stronger. Thank you for Tiffany realizing her mistakes while I'm still here, while I'm still breathing." How many mothers leave this world without waiting for forgiveness? But I waited. I made it. Today, sitting in my favorite corner of this house, I can say that I have found peace in my soul. Not because the past has suddenly stopped hurting, not because the wounds have healed without a trace, but because love managed to return to my life before it was too late. Now Tiffany and I cherish every minute spent together. The time that many children carelessly waste, until there is no one left to hug. Every kiss on my forehead, every unexpected "I love you," every evening filled with simple, sincere laughter, these are priceless treasures to me. I carefully keep them in the depths of my soul, like the most precious diamonds. At 68, I have grasped the truth: forgiveness is not a mercy we show to the offender, but a priceless gift we give to ourselves. To love, despite the tormenting pain; to embrace, despite the bitter disappointment; to heal, despite the bleeding scars. This is the greatest miracle that life generously gives us. My heart aches at the thought of mothers who left this world in agonizing anticipation of a call, a long-awaited visit, a cherished forgiveness, never receiving it. I, on the other hand, had the rare honor of seeing repentance in my daughter Tiffany's eyes, of feeling the heat of her sincere tears on my withered hands. There is no greater grace in the world. To realize that our bonds of love have been restored, while life still beats, while the sun still illuminates the horizon. Today, every time Tiffany gently hugs me, I feel her hugging that young woman who selflessly sacrificed herself for her. And every time her face is lit up with a smile, I see in it the fulfillment of a promise of love, redemption, a new life. After all, motherly embraces never close, even after 1,000 painful separations.